Hello, and welcome to Standard Tasks in AssetWise Ivera Performance Management APM 7.0. The learning objectives for today's training is to teach you what a standard task is, to tell you what the different types of standard tasks are, the standard task naming conventions, how to create a standard task, how to create a route creation best practices, and corrective task creation best practices. So what is a standard task? Well, a standard task is a plan for maintenance work that is performed repeatedly on a piece of equipment over the course of its lifetime. The standard task contains all of the information required to create work order tasks. This includes the asset to work on, the asset to charge, the resource required to perform the task, the indicators to be read, and the procedures and documents appropriate to the performance of the task. When work needs to be performed, a work order task is generated from the standard tasks. Standard tasks are independent of each other, and each standard task can be included on one or more standard jobs. What are the different types of standard tasks? The first type I'd like to talk about is inspection task. An inspection task is for collecting readings for condition-based or failure-finding indicators with similar search criteria, for example, trade, frequency, or operating condition. This type of task is a task where the user will go inspect a predefined set of assets. The inspector will check for indicators on those assets to see if follow-up work is required on the asset. For example, in Task 1, there are 3 separate inspections to do: oil condition, tire pressure, and washer fluid level. The next type of standard task I would like to talk about are corrective tasks. Corrective tasks are used to identify the work required to restore an asset's alarm condition to a normal state. These tasks are candidates when users acknowledge alarms. For example, if your inspection task shows you that the washer fluid is low, then a corrective task would be to fill the washer fluid. The final type of standard task I'd like to talk about today is a scheduled restoration or discard task. A scheduled restoration or discard task is to repair, replace, or clean an asset at a defined frequency. This could be a time-based task or a meter-based task. Typically, these tasks are created when it is not cost-effective to put the particular task under an inspection routine. For example, you may just change your oil filter every 5,000 miles because it is not cost-effective to send an inspector out, take an oil sample, and then have it analyzed at a lab. Simply changing the oil is cheaper. These types of decisions are typically made during the work identification analysis. Best practices, standard task naming conventions. For pre-planned corrective tasks, start with the task action and describe the component on which the action is being taken to the appropriate level of detail. Be sure and consider the asset name that the task is being assigned to. Example: replace lube oil system, oil filter. For scheduled restoration or discard tasks, start with the task action and describe the component onto which the action is being taken to the appropriate level of detail, just as you would in a corrective task. Use standard abbreviations if necessary. For example, restoration-repack coupling, or discard-replace lube oil cooler. For inspection routes, start with a route, followed by area if needed, frequency, trade, shift, operating state, PDM technology, if other than visual inspection, and maintenance group, if needed. If you use title case, we often eliminate the commas to save some space. For example, route - water treatment, daily, operator, nights, running normally, utilities, operations. Best practices, creating a standard task from scratch. Browse existing standard tasks to see if a task already exists for your proposed purpose. Select the proper work type. Follow the naming conventions. Select a trade with the skill set required to do the task. Estimate the duration of the task. Complete task classification information. And to add task instructions or linked procedures if required. Best practices: creating an inspection task. Select a manageable area within the asset hierarchy for the inspection route. Review indicators not assigned in indicator panel. Select appropriate indicator search criteria grouping. In the Browse panel, sort by asset name to group assets together. Select indicators for the route in roughly the order that they will be inspected. Review indicator sequence in the field with the inspector and adjust as required. Use a mobile device to collect information. And fill out the mobile device information on the Options tab. Corrective tasks best practices follow the same pattern, except select the most granular asset possible from the hierarchy. I will now demo how to create a standard task from scratch. From the Sites view, click on Reliability Program. Then make sure your selected tasks. Select New. Click on From Scratch. This will create a new standard task. You can accept the task number as is or enter your own. Create a title following the standard naming conventions, such as route, yearly mechanic, day, shift, shutdown. Enter your asset number or select it from the hierarchy. We will select the forklift asset. Now select your work type. The work type setting is a mandatory field. I will enter the work type on condition. Work classifications are used to group work order tasks into categories relevant for the site. You can filter or sort lists of tasks according to work classification. Once work type is assigned to a standard task, only classifications for that work type are available for selection. I will enter the work classification Inspection. Work priority describes the urgency of the work and the sequence in which it will be completed. I will enter the work priority Normal. The next setting to be applied is expected frequency. The expected frequency tells people who plan and schedule work how often the task should be performed. I will enter an expected frequency of 1 year. Operating condition is the condition the asset must be in when the work is performed. For example, if the asset must be shut down in order to perform the work, you would select the operating condition called shut down. I will enter an operating condition called shutdown. For maintenance group, you will select the appropriate maintenance group that will work on the task. APM uses this information to determine GL account segments for labor charges, the default planner, and scheduling options for tasks, and to filter and sort lists for future scheduling. I will enter days 8 hour mech. PDM technology. A predictive maintenance technology, PDM, such as vibration analysis or oil analysis, is used to determine the condition of in-service equipment to predict when the maintenance should be performed. This information appears on work order tasks created from the standard task. I will enter visual audible inspection. Next, you can add detailed descriptions of the task in the Task Description tab. Next, save your work and click on the Triggering sub-tab. If the option to Always Trigger regardless of the asset or site status is selected, the standard task will always trigger. If the option to Only Trigger when the assets and site have the following statuses, the asset task will only trigger if the asset and site have one of the selected statuses. Now that you have created the task, you have the option to enter additional planning information and other requirements, such as indicators, procedures, and documents. Save the record by clicking the Save button. Click on the Planning tab to select your primary trade. Click on New and select a resource from the pull-down menu. I will select Mechanic-Mechanic. Add your labor requirement. I will add 5 hours and click OK. You may add comments if you would like. Your estimated duration is updated with your new labor requirement. I will now demonstrate how to define an inspection route on a standard task. Navigate from the Planning tab to the Inspection tab. Here you will define your inspection route by using indicators. There are three tabs available to you: Dynamic Indicators, Static Indicators, and Options. Dynamic Indicators. Using dynamic indicators, you can build dynamic inspection routes. This means indicators on the route will automatically be included or excluded based on the criteria you define. This is covered in another training module, so we will skip it here. Static indicators are indicators that, when included on a route, will always appear on a check sheet, regardless of any criteria you may have set up in the dynamic indicator section. There are several ways to add indicators to a standard task. I'm going to demonstrate two. First, click on the Browse button. This will bring up a search screen where you can browse indicators by asset, trade, frequency, operating condition, maintenance group, PDM technology, etc. Check the box beside the indicator to select the indicators you wish to put on your route. Click OK or Apply Changes after you have selected your indicators. You may add indicators from different assets on your route. The sequence number represents the order in which the indicators are collected. You can adjust the order by highlighting the indicator and moving them up or down using the up or down buttons. You can also change the sequence number field manually. To do this, enter a new sequence number in the sequence number field and press OK. You can choose a column to sort, and then select Apply Sort to order your route by the sorted column. This is a good method to group assets together if you have multiple assets on a route. Adding indicators to a route by dragging and dropping indicators. Instead of using the Browse Indicators functionality, one can drag indicators from the indicator panel directly onto the static indicator screen. Start with having both the indicator panel and the standard task open and visible on your screen. Having two monitors makes this much simpler. Simply highlight the indicators you wish to bring over on the indicator panel and drag them to the standard task. Once they are on the standard task, you can sort and order them as you did previously. Next, click on the Options tab. For indicators to include on check sheets and work order tasks, select all indicators on the task. Under Collection Planning, you may set a minimum percentage of indicators to read to make it a valid inspection. Under Mobile Computing, you may select a mobile computer to assign a tablet, computer, or handheld device to enable electronic collections of check sheets. Click on the Browse button to select the mobile computer you wish to use. This replaces paper check sheets. You can also assign the check sheet to a shift or an employee. Today we learned what a standard task is, what the different types of standard tasks are, standard task naming conventions, how to create a standard task, how to create a route, route creation best practices, and corrective task best practices. This concludes the presentation on standard tasks.